Hello, how's everybody doing tonight? Tonight, we are going to be working on breaking off the supports of these minis, and we're going to prime and zenithal highlight them. If we get done quick enough, might start painting one of them as well. Alright, let us hop into it. Scooch this stuff out of the way. Move my light. So for breaking out the supports, I actually messed up on these guys. I got them printed the other day, the other night, and let's turn the light on. There we go. Actually, I'm gonna zoom the camera in a fuzz. There we go. I got them all washed in isopropyl alcohol. Got all the, excess goopy resin stuff off of them. But I dropped them right into my UV curing oven before taking the supports off. Normally, I would just use my finger and these nippers and just pop off all of these supports and then put the mini itself in the oven. Don't know why it slipped my mind this time, but these supports are way easier to get off when the resin is kind of pliable. With it already cured, they snap and are very brittle, and you kind of have to be careful on how you pop them apart. It also means that when you go through and clean up all the little zits, the little leftover contact points, you have to shave away at it with your knife, because they're so brittle and you have a lot more cleanup. So it's going to take a little bit more. But first thing, you just kind of flex these to break them off. And then I'll use these little nippers. Some places you got to be careful, because if you just use the leverage of the support, you can end up see this operation right here. So I've got all of these little supports that were under the bumps of the fingers. When you get so many of them together, it creates this big bridge of resin, and there have been times where I'll just snap like that, and it just breaks his wrist off. There's just so much force, so you kind of have to be a little gingerly. It also helps to when you have this scaffolding where all of these things kind of work back and forth together. It's hard to get inside and get the ones back behind in there. So a lot of times I'll just clip these off the bottom. And since these are so far away from the model, you can normally be pretty rough with them. Where'd you go? There it is. Once you get the bottom off, these little parts are just kind of like an accordion. They can kind of fold out and flip away. So you just got to be careful. Make sure you don't break off any features of the model. But this is so much easier if you do it while it's still wet. There we go. It's also good if you're going to use nippers like this, be mindful which side the hard edge is on. Like that hard edge there and that soft edge. If you make sure that the hard edge is like against the bottom, like against the face, it'll clip better. Sometimes I just use them like pliers and I grab. But then when you do that, it makes more little zits that you have to clean up afterwards. And we have a good bit of them. See all those on the base? Got a good bit of them on the underside of the bow. So we'll have to go through and clean these up. Fortunately, the texture on this guy is a lot nicer. I like it's just smoother and everything, so these little zits are easier to see. Bases are pretty easy, but you got to make sure that you don't crack the base in half because these things are thin. And we'll do some special stuff with this in a little bit. This is a lot. That music feels a little loud. There we go. Hey, Academy Impossible. Thanks for joining. And Ravishers. Not sure if you're a group or a person, but thanks for coming by and hanging out. I'm new to Twitch streaming. This is like my third stream. And I'm streaming a lot right now, not because I have a schedule to do so, but just because I have a lot of work to get done. And I'm just kind of coming at it from the approach of, as I need to do things for my D&D game, might as well share it with you guys. Let you guys see what it looks like to DM if you're interested in DMing, interested in what goes into preparing for a game. I'm considering like even prepping my session notes and the adventure and my design and stuff like that, under the pretense that my players don't watch, because that would be spoilers, and spoilers are no bueno. But if that's something that you guys would be interested in seeing, let me know. This is the mini that we had to pull off of the base and print the base separately because the supports underneath were getting really weird. There we go. Mindful of her tail, both of her tails. It looks like we actually had a little bit of a support snafu on her tail, or at least on the knife. I'll show you once I get it peeled off here. If you look, so here's the model, and she's got these two tails, and like this one tail here has a knife off of it, but if you look at it, it's kind of got a weird flat texture on the bottom. You can maybe see it if I turn it to the side. But essentially, I think a support up towards the front came loose, and so it didn't actually fully print a couple layers, and so it's like super duper thin. Fortunately, it worked out well enough that it's on the edge of a blade, and I think it's going to be okay. That's 2. Now we do the QB Tiefling. Tiefling with 9 tails. Still don't know how I'm going to work that into the story, because it is definitely abnormal for a tiefling to have more than one tail. And I kind of want, since it is a unique thing and it's something that they specifically requested, I kind of want to make it unique to them. because I think it's a great idea. I'm really excited to see what kind of creativity these players bring to the table. They're all new players. Most of them haven't played D&D at all. A couple of them played like a long time ago, but they didn't have any like formal training. Not that you can really have like formal training in DMing, but like they hadn't played with somebody who had played. There was no like passed down knowledge. They just like grabbed the books and tinkered around with them. And when you have new players like that, there's always like when you don't have the presuppositions of what it's supposed to be like, that's when you get into these really cool scenarios of just thinking outside of the box and you know, bringing their own experiences to the table. And I'm really excited to see what a game with them is going to be like. They're all getting very invested in their characters, and they're we haven't even started playing, and they're like, you know, making backstories for them and stuff, which is a good sign. But I haven't parsed the stories yet. I just dumped them in big walls of text in the in a text chat that we have going. So I'll go and copy those out and get them into a document, so I can internalize all of that and work it into the story. A bunch of weird supports getting way up underneath here. Look at this, like shooting out from the side. Got to be careful with this stuff too. When it when it hardens, it is very brittle and it can create very sharp edges. And even like the little pieces that you break off, if they like fall on the ground and you step on them, they will cut you. Let's see, we got a big old mess of them down here next to all these tails. Alright, I can't get in there enough, so I'm going to go ahead and try to clip these bottoms off. There we go. See if we can peel away what we've already clipped. Here's one. These ones are really stuck down here next to these. Oh, there it goes. Got a couple stragglers inside of here. Oh no! I just dropped him. Did I break anything? I didn't hear any snap. Whew, goodness. It gives us a good opportunity to talk about breaking minis. So, I've broken minis before, and I've had them dropped, and I've put them over there on my shelf with all my books and had my books fall over and knock them onto the floor. And that's always disheartening when you sink a lot of time into a mini and it breaks. Super glue does wonders on resin. Normally you can just glue it right back together. But one of the nice things about 3D printing your minis is as long as you don't mind painting them again, you can just print another one. Like if you've already done the supports and tested it, you know, vetted it that it will print out properly, let's print off another one. And you're all good. But super glue is like, I even keep super glue in my DM bag that I bring with me in case somebody picks their mini up by the end of their staff and swings it around and it snaps, and in the middle of the game you don't want to lose those little pieces. There we go. Just keep a trusty little trash can down here underneath my desk. Alright, now let's clean one of these up. So we're going to use a couple things. Sandpaper is one of them. These are just tongue depressors that I glued to this sandpaper, actually. It's a 320 grit. And then I took my X-Acto knife from the backside and cut around them. So I just like you can even see like some of the glue's coming off, but I just put the glue on the tongue depressor and popped it onto the paper, cut it out. And so for these, you just want to make sure that the bottom is flat and even, so that there aren't any little bumps from where the resin cures around the supports. Yeah, a little warping around the outside. That probably doesn't actually matter too much. I might. See that? Even though you're printing it at a little bit of an angle, there still is some variation in the layers. And so if you care about it being completely flat, you know, running a piece of sandpaper or a sanding stick or something like that across them is a good way to smooth it back out. You do want to be careful about the dust. Sanding resin generates a very, very fine particle. I'm not doing a lot of it, so I don't really need to wear a respirator where I'm at. But if you're doing a lot of sanding, you do want to be mindful of that. I've also got pretty good airflow in here in this little office. And so the same way that we had some variations on the top, you can't see it as well, but there is variations on the bottom as well, because those layers go all the way through. And so sanding that will help it stay nice and level when it's sitting on a surface. Alright, let's go ahead and do this gal next. And that way we can just attach her to that base. I like to do some sanding on the foot, the very bottom, so that it'll have a nice flat surface to glue to the base. Ooh, that's a terrible sound. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll use the X-Acto knife. Kind of done with the pliers for now. We don't have any big stuff to clip off. But another thing that I have is... where did it go? Did I already bring it out? Let's use this one. I have these little needle files. And I got a set of like 15 of these or so on it wasn't Amazon. I think I went to like a Harbor Freight tool store in town. And so what I do is you either sand it down, or I can just use the edge here, the corner, and just kind of push them off. And that works pretty well. Actually, I think I need a round edged one. I have a couple in here. Yeah, this is the one that I want, not that one. Well, I still might need that. But this one's flat on one side. You can kind of see it. Flat on one side and rounded on the other. A little bit of the rounding there. And that's good for like matching the contours. I think I'm going to grab a little brush too. Here's the one I used last time. That I used to kind of knock off the pieces after I've cut them free. Let's see here. That's a bunch. This is gonna have some weird crevices and like places underneath other places to paint, but that's okay. I'll just make it extra harder on the player for putting me through all this. I'm just kidding. I won't do that. I'm very much in favor of making things as fun for the players as possible. There's one thing about, like, you know, making sure that the game isn't broken and that it's fair, and making players, you know, earn their stuff. And I've found, like, I've run a couple campaigns that were like a year or over a year long, or near to a year. And the thing is when you like force the player, well, I shouldn't say force, that's kind of a loaded word, but when you have the players like earn, or, you know, jump through so many hoops to get so many different things, and they continually fail, then they like end up not doing stuff, and they become risk averse, because it's like, nah, they're just gonna do the safe thing, and they're just gonna, you know, stick with their old faithful and whatnot. And I've found that, and this has just been my experience, and maybe even just like the players that I play with, because the players that I play with tend to be people that I know very well. This new D&D group, I don't know these folks very well, and I'm kind of using it as an opportunity. Maybe not using, that's the wrong word. Maybe taking advantage of this as an opportunity to get to know them better, because they're nice people, and I've interacted with them a good bit. But I don't like really know them or anything. But, oh man, I lost my train of thought. Oh, that's right. Like, drip feeding information to players, and, you know, making them work for information and stuff. It's like, at least in my experience, the players like end up not knowing what's going on. Like there's a certain amount of information that you just need to give players and to make them aware of. And so like the rule of thumb, like I picked this up from Chris Perkins and how he DMs with Acquisitions Incorporated, and he does a really good job of just like not really doing like a lore dump per se, but he'll just like explain the situation, like lay the groundwork out for him, and even tell them like that you suspect that this dude is probably, you know, trying to one up on you, and he kind of does it in a way where well, okay, so I've thought a lot about this and it's hard to put it into words, and the best way that I've learned to describe it, and the kind of the rule of thumb that I use when I do it at my table, is that the players, not the characters, the players should know and be aware of what an audience of a TV show or movie are aware of. So if you cut to the bad guys in their lair and they're talking and discussing, you know, that's and like talking about their plan, that's crucial information for suspense and drama, for people to be invested in the show. Because then when the heroes are like sneaking into the place, they know that the bad guys are aware of them and everything. And yes, that's not realistic, and that doesn't always like fading to black and telling people what the bad guys are doing isn't always like the best way to do it. But letting the players know that they are in a dangerous place when they are in a dangerous place is so valuable. And, you know, sometimes the shady salesman is just like obviously shady. You know, you don't have to necessarily make them roll an insight check or something, because if the point of this scene is to see how they deal with the shady man, then they should know that the man is shady. If the point of the scene is for a secret to possibly go unnoticed, you know, somebody's trying to be like, some bad dude is trying to be secretive about a thing, and he might get caught and he might not, then, you know, don't tell them, because the point is in the question. But if it's like, if there's a timer because, you know, like they're trying to escape and there's like things are gonna blow up, and the players just aren't, like, they're just taking their time and doing the Final Fantasy thing where it's like, you know, the world's gonna blow up in five minutes. Let's talk to everybody in town, because, you know, there really isn't a timer and the world's not really gonna blow up until they walk into the next room. You know, if they're just treating it like that, I mean, tell them, you know, let them know. In my experience, every time I've given more information than I think is appropriate has always turned out for the better, because it's like they know what the options are now. They know what can be done. There's a philosophy in gaming that I like, or like tabletop gaming that I like to hold to, and that is that until it happens at the table, it hasn't happened, and it doesn't exist, even if it's lore that I have built. Oh snap! I thought that was a zit, and I just cut off the back of his sword. Oh well. Yeah. So until it happens at the table, it hasn't happened, and like that means like even major plot points and who the bad guy is and what they were doing, I'm still writing that stuff out. But one of the cool things about D&D fiction is that it's adaptable and it's changeable, and that doesn't mean that, you know, like the bad guys can time travel and stuff, but there's almost like this mindset that the fiction that the dungeon master creates at the table is worth less than the fiction that the dungeon master creates when they prepare their notes. So like, you know, when I'm making the adventure and I'm writing this stuff all out and I'm just sitting at my computer clickety clacking away on my keyboard, that my, I'm pulling stuff out of the air. I'm activating my imagination. And I'm like, okay, well, what about this idea? And then I'll like explore that idea and like, nope, that idea is crap. So I throw it away. Is that unfair that I threw that away? Like was that ever canon? No, it wasn't a canon because like I was thinking about using that, and then I decided not to put that in my session notes. I deleted that out, or I put it in another document and saved it for another place that I might use later as an idea bucket. But when I'm at the table and I look at my session notes and the way that the players are playing and what I have prepared just doesn't make sense anymore. Because like if you've ever done writing, you know that writing is a refinement process. You can write a thing down and then come back later and be like, oh no, I don't like that, but I do like this one piece, but we'll change all of this. And then you refine it. And then you can set it down and you go back and forth and you try new things, and every pass you go over it, it gets better and better and better. And so like when I'm making my DM notes for the adventure, that's not gospel, it's not canon. That is the latest pass over my notes, and then whatever happens at the table happens. And that gets canonized and codified into the lore of what went down. And so if you make something up on the spot, then like that's just the latest revision of your notes. It's just as viable. And so when playing, it's like if it until it happens at the table, it hasn't happened, and it's not permanent, and there's still value in like planning and doing all of that stuff, because you want a scaffold to build off of. But I don't know, I just think it's more fun when you give players information and adapt the story to them, make them the center of it, because you can't know what they're gonna do. That's part of the fun of the DM. Another way to ensure that works well is to give them situations, not story. The players are supposed to bring the story, not you. You're supposed to bring the situations. A lot of times I will put my players in very perilous situations, not as like a hee, I'm a bad dungeon master, I'm gonna make my players do this terrible thing, but more of like, I desperately want to try and make this challenging for my players, and they always steamroll through everything. And sometimes I'll dial it up so hard, and like every encounter is deadly plus. And they find a way, man. They find a way through it. And I'm continually surprised, and sometimes they almost all die. And I have to like, create some stuff in the moment to keep things going, and then like I find out I didn't even need to, because then they had a plan and now they're all back on their feet, and it's just crazy and it's cool. And it's so fun. Man, DMing is great. I remember the first time I started playing and I was like, oh man, I'm finally going to get to play. I've been DMing for so long. Now I get to play. This is going to be great. And I just like shut down, like my brain just clamped up, and I was like, the dungeon master was like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, it's like I didn't even know how to play Dungeons and Dragons. DMing is so different from playing. It's like, it really is. Playing is a really unique skill. And you can be a good player and not a good dungeon master. And you can be a good dungeon master and not a good player. One of the things that really frustrated me about playing, and that I learned from being a player, is having a dungeon master who didn't really give a lot of descriptions. And so, like, I didn't even know the questions to ask. And he didn't really offer up a ton of information, because, he was new to DMing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like I think sometimes as a dungeon master, we don't realize that we have been looking at our world and everything, and we know all the names of the people in town, and at least we have a name list, at least their occupation and stuff, and we know what the adventure is going to be like here pretty soon, like once the players get into the weeds. But the players are, like, when they start playing, they are looking at a black void. They don't see anything. And until you mention that there's 2 buildings next to them, they don't see them. And so when you ask a player what they want to do, and you don't tell them what's around them, and they don't know the questions to ask yet, they are completely blind. 100%. And that leads into this philosophy that I was talking about how until it happens at the table, it doesn't exist. They could walk into town. You could say, you're walking down the street and you approach this small little hamlet. What the heck does small little hamlet mean? Until you tell them that there's a water mill, on the side of the road that feeds into it's a part of a stream. They didn't know there was a stream there. So okay, we've got a road, and we've got a stream, and we've got a water mill. Like what else do you see? Well, you don't notice that there's like woods on the other side of the stream? Well, now I do. Now that you said it, there's woods over there. I could be thinking, okay, well, there's a water mill, and there's a stream, and then there's woods over there, and there's a little river. Well, what are the kids here doing? Like, what are the kids? Are there one of those kids like that where they play with the little stick and wheel, the hoop and wheel, the hoop and stick or whatever it's called? And then the dungeon master looks at you and like, no, there's no kids here. Well, you're like, great. Well, now I can't assume. I can't assume what stuff is here. What is here? Like, oh, and then the 5 skeletons that are in front of you attack, and you're like, wait, what? There's 5 skeletons there. He's like, yeah, I had this encounter planned, and they were all there. They were there, and they were. But until you say anything, they're just looking at a black void. So it's really important to be descriptive, and to be generous with your descriptions, and to put them in a place that asks and begs a question. Because the idea is that you set the scene and you put them in a challenging place, and then they need to describe what they do. They need to respond. And if there's nothing to respond to, then they're going to have a hard time with it. Unless they're a very experienced role player and they know what they want and they know the questions to ask, then they're going to have a hard time of it. Dungeon mastering is really fun, though. It's really rewarding, too. Excuse me. We're at 41 minutes. Just wrapping this one up. Alright, let's sand the bottom of his base. Alright. Let's go ahead and set up the excuse me. Set up the airbrush. We'll get these guys primed, highlighted. Oh wait, no, we need to super glue this one first. Let's see, right about there. Put it dead center. I think that's probably right. Or off to the side. Yeah, off center's probably okay. Oh, dang it! Oof. Nice. Alright, and actually, shouldn't have put that back, because we need to magnetize these. Let's take a magnet, zoom out. Okay. Check the orientation. Nice. Put that fan for a second. Wow, that one did really good too. check on something here while those are drying. Okay. Let's get the old ghetto paint booth. One of these days I'll make one of these that has a little exhaust vent. So we're going to need the compressor. I'm using Vallejo black surface primer. All right, and here we go. Actually, let me put a paper towel down. Did I get a clog? I think I got a clog. I think we're good. And the QB. These tails are going to be a bit of a booger because they're all obscuring each other. I want to make sure I get up underneath his clothes because I'm not getting a paintbrush up in there, so I want it at least to be black and shadowy. I think we're good. Alright, we'll give it a little bottle of airbrush cleaner. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Squirt, 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 squirt. Paper towel. All right, we're ready for the white. And we are an hour in. Okay. Got them all cleaned up and primed in an hour. So we're probably looking at an hour 20. Off my little airbrush cleaner bottle. A sip. Don't forget to hydrate, y'all. Get a spray booth. Probably good enough. Yeah. good. Oh, dude. What the heck was that? Fortunately, that was mostly on the base, and that's just going to get black on it anyway. I don't know if I've ever had it spray a big blob out like that before. Weird. You know what? While I have these, I think I might... Where is he? I think I might paint this monk real quick. And since I already have the paintbrush set to white, I'll just do it with a brush real quick. Out of the way, Milliput. See, it actually goes on pretty quick with the brush. You just use a good bit more. It also takes a while longer to dry when you brush it on because it's a lot thicker and it's not getting the constant airstream like the airbrush gives. Like the airbrush will throw the paint particles onto the model and then it's constantly just circulating the air around and blowing it around so it like dries it even faster. Alright, setting it in front of there. I'll clean this up. Watch it paint dry. Is it exciting? Take a little bit. All right, let's get a screenshot. Nice. I'm gonna go wash this in the sink. I'll be right back. Did I have my mic muted this whole time? That's insane. This is a Wood Elf Ranger, Lucrum. Have you been on here for a little bit? Yeah, I was muted too. I stepped out to empty out my paint cup, and I muted the mic, and when I came back I must not have unmuted it. What you playing tonight? You playing Apex? Word. How would I go about making you a mod? I did it. Unless I mistyped you. Your name. When did you change your name to Princess, Lucrum Chan? Nice. With great power comes great responsibility, don't forget that. That's fair. Good to know. Does it feel good to be a mod? Okay, I think we're ready to wash this guy. Maybe in tricky, huh? Alright, we're gonna go do Seraphim Sepia for his flesh and for his hair. I'm actually getting kind of low on this stuff. I use this a lot. So washing, here, I'll show you. Let's finish this arm. Washing helps with shadows. Light affects small things differently than it does large things. Because of the way that it scatters and refracts through the air. And so, like, if I were to leave him painted just like this, he looks like a small thing because his shadows are how light would normally act on a small thing. So you want to simulate how shadows interact on large things so that he looks like a small, large thing, if that makes sense. So what it does, if you look at this arm here, see how this arm almost looks like it's just like colored in with crayon? This one here. This one, you can actually like see his muscles. You can see the contour of his muscles. And it just adds some depth and shadow to it. And the way that it does that is that, you know how liquid has a skin? How, you know, if you drop a bubble of water, it'll have a surface tension that'll stay bubbled up. So washes have what's called a surfactant in them that keeps them from bubbling up so much. And what that does is it lets them, instead of bubbling up on the surface, it lets it sink down into the cracks where normally it'd bubble up and stay together. And when it gets down into the cracks, it rests there and dries and creates shadows. Or what look like shadows anyway. Because shadows are normally in cracks and crevices. So see, now look at this arm. It doesn't look like it's... See, like, you can actually see his muscle there. And like right here on the inside of his elbow. So like if you're looking at his chest here, he actually has pecs. You just can't see them. And if you drop some wash on there, now you can. Now you normally don't want it to get too thick, and if it does get too thick, you can dry your brush off and kind of wick it up into the brush. But here's a good use of it, like this ear. Normally the inside, like the curly inside part of your ear, is darker because it gets obscured by the light. So you toss a little wash in there, it ponds up in the little crevices, and it makes it look more realistic because it's it now has the illusion of the way that shadows work on big things, even though this is a small miniature. See? So now you can see like his ear looks a lot more natural. And then like around back behind his neck there. A little bit too much. I'm gonna wick that off. Then I'm gonna put some of the same stuff because this is like a nice light. I'm gonna put it on his hair too, because his hair is blonde. And it just adds depth. Oops. If I'd have snapped a screenshot beforehand, or maybe in the VOD, you can roll back. Like when you just paint it, it looks fine. Then when you wash it, it looks good. And you go back to the other one, and the other one looks like crap. Like when you put them side by side, you're like, oh, now I get it. But all minis, like every time I paint a mini, they look like junk until I wash them. And the washing is really what gives life to a mini. It does so much for a mini's quality. Got a little bit more skin back here. All right, let's put that back. Let's do a darker brown for his other wood stuff. Let's use Agrax Earthshade. I used to just do everything with a black wash, but I found out that that doesn't always look the best. Like shadows can look, like shadows aren't black. Typically shadows are blue. And the reason that they're blue, depending upon this, there's a lot of stuff to it. But like if you're outside in the sun, your shadows tend to have a blue tint to them because they're catching the scattered light from the sky. Whereas the stuff that's in the light is getting the warm light from the sun. So outdoor shadows tend to be a bit cooler colors. And in the light, the highlights tend to have warmer colors. And sometimes when you just use black on everything, it doesn't, like, it can add extra tint to areas that you're not needing it, and it can make it look weird. Like, it's good to put a red wash on red stuff instead of black, because it can just make it look all muddled. I'm going to use a green wash on his outfit here. Another thing that washes do is they add like a creamy texture to it, almost like a semi-gloss. A lot of the paints that I use, the apple barrel paints, almost have a chalky texture when they dry. I think this is Caleb's character. This would be Grace's husband. But the wash gives it a smoother, creamier texture than just the chalky dried paint. He's a Wood Elf Ranger. No subclass yet because they're only level 1. Alright, so let's do BL Tan Green. And this is a very blue green, which is good, which means it's a cooler green color. So it'll be good for shadows. It's not going to do too much on his pants, but there are some folds in the cloth that it'll stick into, which will be good. But you do want to be careful with your tinted washes, because like if you're just using black, one of the nice things about black washes is if you accidentally get it on something else, well, then that thing just got darker. But if I get this on something else, well, that thing becomes green. And that's a bit more of an issue. Just got to be careful with them. I didn't pick out this color scheme too. He's kind of got a Peter Pan vibe going on. This is what they painted him in Hero Forge. I actually was thinking that he had like a bit of a Link vibe going on, but now that I said Peter Pan, man, he's totally got a Peter Pan vibe. That's quite hilarious. I think that's kind of it. I think I'm gonna go put some Nuln Oil on his blade, and then we'll do his eyes. I think it'll be good. And we're about out of time too. We're at 2 hours and 16 minutes. It's 11:51. Right there across the blade. Yeah. I think it looks pretty cool. What do you think? Let's get some eyes on him. I already got the first black blob. That actually turned out really good. If I don't mess up these pupils, this is probably going to be one of the better eyes that I've done. The best eyes, I'm going to put him in front of the fan for a second. The best eyes that I've ever done are on Rurik. Have you seen his mini yet, Lucrum? We used to have a mini for it where we used to use minis when we were playing in person. check him out. This is like one of my favorite paint jobs I've ever done. And I love his eyes. All right, moment of truth. Oh man, that turned out fantastic. I need to put something on his lips. That's too bright. Kind of feel like he needs some highlights. There we go. See you tomorrow, Luca. right. Thanks for watching. Y'all be good.